Hi, it's Tarrant.
And Stella from Meeple University on the Dutch Tower.
Today we'll be teaching you how to play Winterhaven Woods, game designed by Joel Bodkin and published by Featherstone Games. We are using a prototype copy here of the game, and so the rules and components may not be final.
Let's get to the table.
Winterhaven Woods is an interactive card drafting game for 1 to 6 players, in which players will be attempting to put together their best woodlands and meadows of critters that they can. Players will draft trees to build up their woodlands, take critters who can populate those woodlands, while using some of the animal kingdom's sneakier critters to steal from their opponents, and try to keep their predators well fed. The player who gains the most points from their trees, critters and predators will win the game. First, we're going to take you through the standard variant of the game, which plays 3 to 6 players. To set up, each player takes one of the Heart of the Woods cards, showing 3 trees, and places it in front of themselves. Any leftover cards, once all players have taken theirs, are returned to the box. Shuffle all of the remaining cards into a single stack, and that's it, you're now ready to play. The standard game plays over 3 rounds, and to begin each round you will deal each player 7 cards. The players will first draft these cards around the table so that each player has a choice of the 7 cards they finish up with, and then players will build them into their meadows and woods. So let's first look at the draft. To start the draft, the player looks at the 7 cards they've been dealt, and then chooses one which they wish to keep, placing it face down on the table. They'll then hand the remaining 6 cards to the player on their left, and then receive 6 cards from the player on their right. They'll then repeat this, choosing 1 card and handing the rest on, and so on until 7 cards have been gained in this way. All players now flip their 7 gained cards face up into a region called the Meadow, above their Heart of the Woods card. In the first round of the game, these will be the only cards in your meadow, but you'll add them to any that are already there in subsequent rounds. All players will now resolve the cards in their meadow in a specific order, and there are 4 steps. First, they will plant trees into their woods. Second, they will populate their woods with critters from their meadows. Third, they'll use cards with steal effects to steal cards away from their opponents. And finally, if they have any predators, they may potentially be able to use them to eat unguarded critters. So now let's look at each of these steps in detail. The first step is plant, and this strictly involves the tree cards, and they all have a solid tree icon in one of the corners. In your player area, you have the capacity for a total of 3 different wood spaces. At the start of the game, you only have 1, represented by this Heart of the Woods card. When you plant a tree card, you take it from your meadow and you add it to one of your 3 potential wood spaces, and you can either add to an existing collection of trees or create a new one. There's no limit to the number of trees that can be in a single woods, but once you've planted a tree, you can't then move it. Although you have 3 spaces for woods, a collection of trees does not become a woods until there are at least 3 trees in it. So this is now a woods, as is the Heart of the Woods you have at the start of the game, but this lone tree is not yet a woods. This definition is important for the next phase, Populate. The Populate phase applies to critters and deer who have this icon in the corner. This icon indicates that that animal must be populated into a woods in order to score at the end of the game. In the base game, these are the red and grey squirrels, the rabbit, and the deer. In the Populate phase, you'll move as many of these animals as you wish into your woods, subject to the following restrictions. Firstly, that the collection of trees must be a woods to be populated. You could not populate this tree, but you could populate these woods. Secondly, that unless otherwise stated, you cannot populate more than 1 type of animal into a specific woods. And thirdly, a woods may never have more animals populating it than there are trees in the woods. Each of the animal types has its own additional restrictions. Both the red and grey squirrels are limited to populating at a maximum of 5 in a given woods, even if there are more trees. You could not add another red squirrel to this woods. Red and grey squirrels are considered different critters and cannot populate the same woods. Deer are only allowed to populate in pairs, or to put it another way, after your population phase, there must always be an even number of deer in each of your woods that have deer. You still need 1 tree per deer, not 1 tree per pair. Rabbits, on the other hand, work quite differently. You are only ever allowed to have 1 rabbit in any given woods, but a rabbit may co-populate with any other species. You still need 1 tree per animal in that woods, so this rabbit would not yet be able to join these squirrels as there aren't enough trees. Once you're done populating, any animals you were unable to populate remain in your meadow. Once all players are done, you'll move to the steal phase. There are 3 different animals involved in the steal phase, and these are all indicated by a star in the top left corner. These animals are the foxes, the owls, and the beavers. Each animal involved in the steal phase has a unique number in the star in the top left corner, and when you resolve the steal phase, you will start from the overall animal with the lowest number and progress up to the highest number. Each of these cards has a slightly different effect, but they all involve stealing 1 card from any opponent. When you play a fox, you may steal a critter from any opponent's meadow, and critters are the small animals that a fox would be able to carry away. These are either of the squirrels, the rabbit, or the hedgehog. Take the card and then either add it to your meadow or immediately populate it to a woods. Owls prefer to hunt in the woods, and so when you play an owl, you may steal a critter, again a small animal, from any other player's woods. Again, taking that either to your meadow or populating it straight into one of your woods. Beavers, on the other hand, will steal an opponent's trees, and with a beaver card you may steal a single 1 tree card and immediately plant it into one of your woods or collections of trees. Losing a tree may force the player who owned that tree to lose some animals back into the meadow. Here, for example, this woods has dropped from 3 to 2 trees. It no longer qualifies as a woods, and so it can't be populated, all of these squirrels going back into the meadow. While in this case, if a beaver took this tree, then there are now 3 trees to 4 animals, so 1 deer would go back to the meadow. But because deer have to populate in pairs, a second would also return. Using a steal effect is optional, but if you choose to use it, then you place the card into a sideways pile near your meadow. This will be worth negative points at the end of the game, depending on how many steal effects you've used. If you choose not to use a card's steal effect, then you will discard it from your meadow. The final phase of the round is the hunt phase, and this involves the game's 2 predators, the bears and the wolves. Predators have to hunt and eat other animals in order to score points, and that's what happens in this phase. When resolving the hunt, you will first resolve all wolves and then resolve all bears. Firstly, to resolve the wolves, ignore any players who only have a lone or pair of wolves. Wolves will hunt only in a pack of 3. Once you've established your pack, determine its position in the turn order, again by referring to the unique numbers in the top left corner of the cards. Whichever wolf pack has the single lowest number goes first. When it is a wolf pack's turn to hunt, it may optionally eat any 1 animal from any player's meadow, including its own, with the exception of another predator or a hedgehog. When it eats, place the animal underneath the pack and rotate the pack sideways. This pack is now resting. After all the wolf packs have finished hunting, whether they choose to or not, it's now time for the bears to act. And again, the bears will act in order based on the number in the top left corner of the card. Bears hunt in exactly the same way, with the exception that if there is a wolf in a meadow that is not yet part of a wolf pack, that may be the animal that the bear chooses to eat. Once the bear is eaten, once again place the eaten animal underneath the bear and rotate the bear sideways to indicate that it's resting. At the end of the hunt phase, any predators that were unable to hunt because there was no valid prey left in the meadows remains upright in its hunting position. Then it is the end of the round. Any players who have a resting bear must return that bear to its hunting position. Any player with a resting wolf pack may optionally return that wolf pack to its hunting position or may leave it in the resting position. If you do return it to the hunting position, then you will need to hunt again in a subsequent round, or risk the points that you've already gained for hunting once. We'll see exactly how this works when we get to endgame scoring. There's one type of critter left which we haven't spoken about because there's no action associated with it, and that's the hedgehog. Hedgehogs do not populate your woods, and they're too spiky to be eaten by your predators, although they can be stolen from the meadow by a fox. For hedgehogs, you simply want to collect them in your meadow, and that's where they'll score points. After the first and second rounds are complete, you'll play a new round by dealing 7 cards to each player and then repeating as before. After the third round is done, the game is over. You'll then count up your points. Every animal that is in one of your woods scores you 1 point, so here there are 7 animals. Out in your meadow, each hedgehog scores you 1 point, so here it's 2 points. Any animals that need to be populated to score are simply discarded. Then check each of your predators that is in the resting position. These will score 1 point for each card in their stack, so each animal eaten and each predator, which is 3 wolves in the case of a wolf pack. So here, this wolf pack, having eaten 2, scores 5 points, and this bear, which has eaten 2, scores 3. This bear is not resting because it failed to eat in the final round, so it, as well as anything it ate earlier in the game, are discarded and are worth no points. This is where you need to be careful with your wolf packs. If you put them back in the hunting position but then fail to eat in the subsequent round, you'll lose all the points associated with that pack. Now you'll count up the number of steal cards that you've played during the game and lose points based on how many. The first card you play is free, the next 2 will each cost you 1 point, and any cards from the 4th onwards will cost you 2 points each. Finally, evaluate the game's 4 bonuses. Any player who finishes the game with 3 separate woods, that is, 3 groups of trees of 3 or more, gains the forest bonus of 3 points. Any player who finishes with a total of 11 or more trees gains the tree hugger bonus, which is also 3 points. All players now count up the total number of deer that they've populated into their woods, and whoever has populated the most deer gains 3 points for the deer season bonus. In the case of a tie, all tied players receive 1 point. Finally, a predator, or pack of predators, that has eaten at least 1 squirrel, 1 rabbit, and 1 deer across the course of the game receives a balanced diet bonus of 3 points. The player with the highest score wins. In the event of a tie, whoever has the most trees wins, and if still tied, victory is shared. There are a couple of small adjustments to the game when you play at 2 players. You will play with a smaller deck and will remove some cards as part of setup, including all of the beavers. These prototype cards don't have the icon on them that will tell you what to remove and what not to, but rest assured that you'll be playing with a smaller and balanced deck. The other difference at 2 players is that the wolves are not controlled by the players, they are controlled by the game. At the start of the round, all players place any wolves that they've drawn in hand into the centre of a table in a place called the Prowling Wolves. Players then redraw until they have 7 non-wolf cards in hand. Once a wolf pack has been formed in the prowling area, then during each subsequent hunt phase, this wolf pack will eat 1 animal from each player's meadow if possible. Each player chooses which of their own animals will be eaten. In this way, the animals in your meadow are always at some risk, even if your opponent is not chasing predators. Other than this, play continues in the same manner it did in the standard game, and the player with the higher score wins. The game will also come with a solo mode, where you as the player will compete against the game, which controls all of the steel cards and the bears. We won't cover the full rules for this variant in this video. And that's how to play Winterhaven Woods. We hope you enjoyed this video.
When we film this video, Winterhaven Woods is going to Kickstarter, so we'll put the link in the description below when it is live, so you can check it out. If you find this video useful, please help us by hitting that like button and subscribe to the Dice Tower if you haven't already done so.
And if you have any questions, comments or feedback, please leave them in the comment section below.
See you next time!